away from the knife!
No, listen to
On
me.
the floor, now!
Listen to me.
Hey, now!
I can do this.
Get your hands...
Two Russian criminals invade a man's home and quietly abduct him, unbeknownst to his wife. They take him to meet a notorious Russian mob boss, Oleg Malenkov, who demands that the man open a nearby safe. However, when the safe is found empty, Malenkov contacts someone, explaining that he came to collect the debt, and since the money isn't there, he'll leave something else instead. Malenkov locks the man inside the safe and kills him. Meanwhile, Bryan Mills buys a giant panda for his daughter Kim's birthday. At home, Kim holds up a pregnancy test, looking at it with concern. Bryan arrives with the panda, followed shortly after by Kim's boyfriend, Jamie. Kim remarks that Bryan is predictable, while Jamie comments that Kim is predictable too, as she sticks to the same routine every day, getting the same orange smoothie from the same spot at the convenience store. Bryan leaves, taking the panda with him, even though Kim admits she feels a little guilty for not wanting it. Afterward, Bryan calls his ex-wife Lenore to talk about Kim. He invites her over for dinner, but she declines. Later, Lenore surprises Bryan by showing up at his place while he's cooking. She confides in him that she's unhappy at home with her husband Stuart, and in a moment of vulnerability, she kisses him. Bryan is tempted but tells her she should work things out with Stuart first. While playing golf with friends, Bryan gets a call from Kim, who invites him to meet at a diner. She's about to tell him about her pregnancy, but they are interrupted by a spoiled child causing a scene at another table. Kim grows anxious and instead asks Bryan for advice on whether she should get a puppy. Stuart later confronts Bryan at his apartment, accusing him of having an affair with Lenore. Bryan denies it, and Stuart demands that Bryan stop seeing Lenore socially. Bryan agrees, assuring him that they're just friends and nothing more. Bryan then receives a text from Lenore asking him to meet her at his apartment for bagels. When he arrives, he finds a bloody knife on the floor, and upon investigating further, discovers Lenore dead in his bed with her throat slashed. As Bryan stands frozen in shock, two police officers burst in, guns drawn, and attempt to arrest him. However, they fail to secure him properly, and Bryan overpowers both officers, handcuffing them. He then escapes through a window, narrowly avoiding capture, and flees through the streets, eventually reaching a garage and making his way to the river. Bryan calls Kim from a payphone, telling her about her mother's murder and how he's being framed. He urges her to stay safe, vowing to protect her. Kim is devastated, sitting down in shock. Meanwhile, Inspector Frank Dotzler and his team investigate the crime scene and visit both Stuart and Lenore's home. Stuart returns from a business trip and is brought in to identify Lenore's body at the morgue, breaking down in front of Dotzler. Bryan secretly enters the morgue, touches Lenore's face, and collects a hair sample. He then traces Lenore's movements through her car's GPS, discovering she visited a gas station before her death. Bryan sneaks into the gas station security room, where he finds footage of Lenore being abducted by a masked man and thrown into a van. One of the men has a distinctive star-shaped tattoo on his hand. Two detectives investigating the gas station find Bryan in the security room and arrest him. However, they quickly realize Bryan's past and suspect that he's setting them up. Bryan calmly escapes from the back seat of the police car, knocking out one officer and forcing the other to continue driving. The detectives chase him as he takes control of the vehicle, which ends up falling into an elevator shaft and exploding. Bryan manages to escape. Dotzler calls Bryan, telling him to stand down as everyone will be looking for him, to which Bryan responds with a defiant good luck. Bryan visits his friend Sam, who agrees to help him with the situation. Sam tells Bryan he'll be there for him no matter what. Bryan expresses his desire to attend Lenore's funeral. The funeral is held, with everyone offering their condolences to Kim and Stuart. Sam, wearing a hidden camera on his lapel, tells Kim to follow her usual routine. Kim smiles knowingly, aware that her dad is watching. Later, Kim becomes suspicious of the excessive security Stuart has placed around the house and decides to leave. She heads to the convenience store for her usual smoothie, where she finds a note on the drink that says "Drink me now." After drinking the entire smoothie in one go, she feels nauseous during class and heads to the bathroom, where Bryan pulls her into a stall. He gives her a serum to counter the effects of the drink he secretly laced. Kim confesses her pregnancy to Bryan. Just as they're about to discuss what to do next, detectives burst in, but Bryan is already gone. As Bryan drives away, he's pursued by Russian thugs who run him off the road, causing his car to explode. One thug mentions going for drinks. Bryan then hijacks a car from an unsuspecting man and tracks the thugs to a liquor store, where he beats them all up, knocking out every last one except for one, the man with the star tattoo. Bryan demands to know who sent them. The man refuses to talk, preferring to die rather than give up his employer. He grabs Bryan's gun and shoots himself in the mouth. Bryan tracks down Stuart, who has hidden himself at a beach house. He confronts Stuart, knowing he was behind sending the thugs. Bryan tortures Stuart for information using waterboarding. Stuart confesses that he was involved in a bad business deal with Oleg Malenkov, and when he failed to repay the debt, Lenny became an unfortunate victim of Malenkov's wrath. Stuart had been relying on Bryan's reputation to solve the problem. He also reveals that Malenkov, a former Special Forces operative, is as skilled at killing as Bryan himself. Bryan, with help from Kim, Sam, and his other allies, arranges a meeting with Malenkov. Malenkov sets up a rendezvous at a downtown building, where Bryan ambushes and kills all of Malenkov's goons. He eventually confronts Malenkov in his apartment. The two engage in a brutal fight, and Bryan manages to disarm Malenkov and shoot him twice. As Bryan approaches Malenkov to deliver the final blow, Malenkov reveals that they were both played by Stuart. Bryan leaves him to die slowly. In Sam's van, Kim discovers text messages from Lenore's phone directing her to a specific location. She texts Bryan and tries to reach him through his earpiece. Stuart, realizing what's happening, kidnaps Kim and shoots Sam in the neck. He calls his pilot to prepare a plane for departure. The cops find Sam alive but wounded. Bryan realizes Kim is in danger, hijacks a car, and tracks her to the airport. At the airport, Stuart prepares to flee with Kim. Bryan manages to stop the plane's takeoff by knocking off its nose gear with his car. Stuart emerges with Kim at gunpoint, but she manages to escape. Bryan confronts Stuart, figuring out that he was trying to escape the consequences of Lenore's murder. He beats Stuart senseless but hesitates to kill him, hearing police sirens approaching. Stuart taunts him, but Bryan, after a moment of consideration, decides to leave him for the police. Bryan meets with Dotzler in his office. Dotzler, having reviewed the case, informs Bryan that he knew he was innocent when he found the warm bagels in his apartment. It was clear to Dotzler that Bryan wouldn't have bought bagels if he were planning to murder his ex-wife. They part ways, and Dotzler closes Bryan's file. Bryan joins Kim and Jamie on a pier, telling them he supports whatever decision they make.